Hey guys, this is SWTOR, and today we're going to be talking about the discipline guide for the Mercenary. And like my other videos, this one will help the Arsenal Mercenary the best, but I think all classes can learn a little bit. Alright, so just as an introduction, I know a lot of other people have made guides. I may have left mine a little bit late because most people already have a pretty good idea what they want to do, but hopefully this will clear up any confusion, and if you're on the fence for a couple of the abilities or things you can take in your discipline, maybe this will clear it up. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our tree, and this is just going to be me explaining it. If you don't already do, I'll take it really fast and simple since most of what it does is already written. So, tracer missile, it's great. It builds basically everything. It's our one building move, and it also sunders, which is important. So just in the general sense, before doing your most hard-hitting moves, you want to do tracer missile. Alright. Then tracer missile against tracer lock, which again is spelling out all the different things it helps build rail shot on our faster heal. And great, our next point is talking about sweeping blasters, which I really like, and as we'll get into later, I think it's really important, and this is just making it crit more and crit harder. Next one, you just event heat every couple seconds. It's great for us. It keeps our heat down very well. And next one, pinning fire. It says that unload and blazing bolts slow target speed, which is great if you're trying to chase someone down or just generally stop them from coming to you. Next one's an ability, heat seeker missiles, and this one's great. It's our hardest single hitter. But the important thing to note is it does more if it's targeted by your heat signature, which is basically your tracer missile. Again, cast tracer missile before you do your hardest hitting moves. Then tracer missile now applies an additional stack of tracer lock and power barrier. Tracer lock is the more powerful of the rail shot, and power barrier is this ability we're going to get into later. But it makes sense you would want to take that ability since all this does is help your power barrier. Alright, great. It helps you all of the abilities use the most crit more, and then it does better crits for these abilities: rail shot, heat seeker missiles, priming shot, and then barrage, which is kind of important. Before in 2.0, tracer missile I think was the only thing that could proc barrage, but now we also have sweeping blasters. Again, I really like sweeping blasters. So basically, if once every 8 seconds, if you do tracer missile, sweeping blasters finishes a cooldown, makes it harder. You generally want to only do unload or blazing bolts, I guess, when the proc is up. There's a slight, I guess you could say a different way to do it in the very beginning, because I've gotten some advice and looked at some people that say it's great to cast blazing bolts at the very beginning, even when it's not procced, and so then when you proc it, you can just cast it again, which I kind of like. Next one is another ability, priming shot. Again, it's like tracer missile, it's kind of a building, but the important thing about this is it causes your next tracer missile to be instant, which is great when you're trying to manage time with barrage and just generally move on the run. In 3.0, I think Arsenals have the best ability for a ranged DPS, and this is the type of ability that helps us with that. Next one, burst mode. This one's complicated, and I didn't understand this at first, so I will try to explain it as best as possible. So I'm just going to read it first. While high velocity gas cylinders active, the armor penetration granted by supercharged gas is increased by 5%, and supercharged velocity stacks build twice as fast and can build 3 additional stacks. Alright, what does this mean? What does this mean? So basically, armor penetration increased. We get that. Basically, it ignores more of the armor, right? Simple. So when you pop your gas cylinders, which is these abilities down here, right? The supercharged gas and supercharged clarity. Once you do that, then your armor penetration increases. So great. What's that second part though? Well, down in the very fine print, supercharged gas also increases your alacrity, but the alacrity is not a set, not for Arsenal. So basically what happens is every time you attack somebody, your alacrity increases, which is I was just building supercharged in the background. But whenever you attack someone, your alacrity is increased. But with this burst mode, your alacrity is increased twice as fast and can be increased more. Build 3 additional stacks. So what does this mean? I'm just in my ship with the training dummy right here. I'm going to cast blazing bolts because basically if your alacrity is increased every time you attack, it would make sense to do something that's a lot of small attacks, which is essentially what blazing bolts is. So I'm just going to do supercharge and then blazing bolts, and you should be able to see my buffs. It looks like a little gun, and it should go up to 6 because usually your alacrity can increase by 3%, but now with Arsenal it can increase to 6% and even faster. You guys ready? So right down here, it's a 4, and then so what I did just there is I cast 1 blazing bolt, which increased it a little bit. I did my instant power surge to do a tracer missile, and then that, as we know with barrage, made that come off cooldown again, hit it again. With that simple sequence right there, we can get the highest alacrity bonus, which is very helpful when we're attacking quickly. Alright, this next one's a little bit more simpler. Basically, all the attacks we do, it's harder. And this is the little fine print that I found important I didn't really know about until kind of recently. It says priming shot marks its target. What does that mean? Well, they take more damage, and that might seem just great, but the lesson you want to take from this is that you want to take priming shot just like tracer missile. You want to do that before your highest hitting ability, which is this, and you could argue rail shot too. Alright, decoy. This was also helped in, I think, 3.2, but before I never really used it. It was pretty useless, just absorbed 1 incoming forcer attack, but now it absorbs 5. I try to make sure I use it. It's a smaller cooldown than all of your other defensive abilities, so you can cast this more often. And so basically what it does is it absorbs attacks, which is great or it could be great depending on the attack. So when you think forcer tech, it's basically just ranged unless you have like some melee DPS that has a random force attack or something, right? Like a shadow or an assassin. But this has the potential to be very hard because, as we know, some assassins and some snipers and sorcerers have very high single hitting abilities, and for the high single hitting abilities, this could absorb them completely, and it could really throw them off and give you a couple seconds to finish off your highest hitting moves and finish your attacker off. Alright, great. Power launcher, again, everything, even electronet, which is kind of interesting. Damage increased. Blazing bolts, new ability, does less heat, more damage. Same cooldown with unload, you just take unload off and put blazing bolts right in. And I guess if you're doing PvE, the weak guys are stunned, but it's not super important for PvP, which I want this guy to be primarily for. Next one, blowback. Basically, when you get interrupted, your next ones can't be interrupted, which is not a big deal for us anymore. I found that in 3.0, if you manage power surge, if you manage tracer missile, the only thing you're really hard casting is your blazing bolts. So basically this means, occasional tracer missile, mostly blazing bolts. So this basically means if your blazing bolts gets interrupted, then do a tracer missile, do a sweeping blasters, get it procced again, and this time it can't be interrupted, which is fine if people are trying to interrupt you and stop you go through a rotation. So, great. That's for those of you who are a little unfamiliar with 3.0. You work your way up through your levels. These little triangles is what we're going to get through next. So every time you hit one of these triangles, you can choose something in these categories. Alright, so those little triangles we talked about are called utility points. And the way this system works is generally, and this is generally, the skillful, or the first tier as I like to think about it, is not super powerful but still helpful, a little bit more powerful, really game changing, right? So the way this works is we can tell we have about 7, right? So yep, 7 utility points we can use. And we can use these anywhere we want technically, but generally, as we said, you want to get to the bottom tier as fast as you can. You can only go to the second tier when you've spent at least 3 points in the first tier, and you can only go to the third tier when you've spent 5 points in any of these 2 tiers. So as you can see, this is, I don't have to put the 4th point down here, I could put it here, but in either case I can still unlock these abilities. So it's just a personal preference for you. So we're just going to briefly go over these again. You can kind of tell what they want, but I'll give my thoughts on them. You then heat 10 heat when stunned, immobilized, knocked down, or otherwise incapacitated. That happens all the time. If I had any sort of heat problem, I would cast that. The only heat problem I have ever come across is when I try to use Missile Blast, which is not a good move almost always, or if I try to spam the AoE of Sweeping Blasters. But the amount of times that I need to do that, I found that if I just do Supercharge and Vent Heat, if I use my Thermal Sensor Override, I can get my heat down really quickly. So this would be very helpful in PvP, but I just don't think it is as helpful as some of the other ones. Again, then heat now additional, then some more heat, as we just talked about. I don't think heat's really a problem. The alacrity bonus is nice, but it's only for 6 seconds, and I don't think it's enough to only use half of it. Power barrier, as we said, it's light them up, basically just helps us, so we probably should use it. And I think, in my opinion, the arsenal is a little bit squishy, and this is to help them be a little bit less squishy. So basically just damage reduction, you build it pretty darn quick, because power shot, tracer missile, or I guess tracer missile is the only one of these that we actually use. We cast that quite frequently, get the power barrier up, and we can usually refresh it, the 5 stacks. So I chose that one. I like to be a little bit more or a little bit less squishy, and so this helps me with damage reduction. Next one, Jet Escape. This is nice for me. Cooldown of Jet Boost, which is our pushback, and Determination, which is our freedom from stun. In PvP you get stunned a lot, so Determination is nice. Jet Boost, when you have a lot of people attacking you, it's great to push them away. In Hutball, it's great for defense, pushing people off platforms. I would say this, out of all of the ones I take, is probably the least important in my opinion, but it's certainly helpful. And as you can see, I think it's more important than any of these over here. Next one, Afterburners. It says Rocket Punch immobilizes, which is great. Again, if you're going near somebody and you're trying to get away from them, quickly immobilize them. I've immobilized, ran around them, pushed them off. Honestly, this is just good. It doesn't fill their resolve bar up too much, in my opinion, and it's great for, I guess, like in Hutball, if you want to immobilize them in the fire pit or something like that. So that's great. And then the second part of that is the Jet Boost push is stronger and pushes enemies 4 meters farther, which is great, just getting people away from you. And in general rule, you want people as far away as possible, since you're a ranged person. Next one is Endurance by 3% and Healing received by 3. Endurance is nice, but it's not significant in my opinion. I don't think the 3% more health outweighs the 5% damage reduction. I could be wrong if someone wants to parse that, but I think this is less important. Healing received, I seem not to have a healer all the time, and so I can't count on that always being utilized. And the second part of that is, okay, what if I use my own heals? If I had Kolto Overload, that's technically a heal, could do more. Yes, it could, but usually that heals me up to full when it's on, and healing more won't do more because it kicks off after 40%. Yeah. So I don't think that really helps me too much. Next one, as I said before, I really like Sweeping Blasters. It does a lot of really helpful things. So if it does more damage, then it can actually be worth it, in my opinion. And that's what this Foresight's, this little utility point, in my opinion, that tips it over into the, alright, this is a really good move to use. So then, as you can see, you only need to have 3 utility points spent in this skillful area, but I put the 4th because I don't think these are as helpful. Hydraulic Overrides is, in my opinion, a must for PvP. Getting away from people, just moving quickly around them. You'll see the power techs move super fast with these, so you won't be as fast, you won't be as long, but a little extra 4 seconds I think is very helpful. Next one I used to have, and I just was not impressed with it. It says when you activate Cure on yourself, periodic damage. So to start off, it's not all damage, just the periodic damage, in other words, dots, right? Damage over time. And it's only for 12 seconds, which is right around the cooldown of Cure. And although this was helpful, I felt like I could stand up against the dot class a little bit better. It takes away global cooldown, it does a little bit heat. It's just, I would rather be able to focus on damage rather than cast something on myself, remember to cast that. And then Protective Field, healing received by 20%, which is great, but only while Energy Shield is active, so that's every 2 minutes, and it doesn't last very long. It only lasts 12 seconds, and at that point, I usually cast it either at the beginning of a fight, right, and at that point I'm trying not to take damage, and the healers wouldn't necessarily be on me, or at the end of the fight where I'm almost dead anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and so I just don't think this is as helpful. Again, just like this one, it's relying on there always being healer, and I can't rely on there always being healer because oftentimes in PvP there's not, or he's not on me. Alright, next one, Energy Shield decreases ability activation pushback by 30%. To start off, we already said the only ability that you're really casting is Tracer Missile, and half of the time that's instant, so I just don't see, and the activation pushback is already low, so I just don't see why you would really need this. And again, it's only when Energy Shield is up, so for 12 seconds every 2 minutes, it's just not as helpful in my opinion. Immune to interrupts is nice, but again, with blowback, it's not as big of a deal, so why would you take it? And Pyro Shield, I've heard people really rant about this because this, I think, and this is what people have said, I've never really tried this out besides initially, and I haven't seen a significant damage. And again, if you're, one, it doesn't do a lot of damage. Two, even if it does do damage, it only does damage to people, I think, pretty close up. You want to be far away. All these other abilities we took is to keep people far away. We don't want them near. We shouldn't rely on this. And even if 1 and 2 you don't care about, I think this can be reflected back to you, this elemental damage. And so if it can be reflected back to you, you're basically hurting yourself, which seems pretty stupid to waste a utility point on that. And then finally, this one eliminates the heat generated by these abilities. Let's just see this: Jet Boost, Concussion Missile, Cure, and Electro Dart. Jet Boost. Man, that was a lot of heat, and you can say that for all these abilities. It's just really, I mean, that was a little bit more, but I don't use Electro Dart very often at all because of personal preference. I don't think it's as helpful. I think Sweeping Blasters does better, and so again, this is pretty stupid in my opinion. The next one, Infrared Sensors, Stealth Detection level by 2. I don't find myself really needing that. If someone's going to sneak up and attack me, they're going to use their blackout or whatever equivalent they have, and I'm not going to see them until they start attacking me. And then I just need to use my other utility points to deal with it. And then Stealth Scan, we already have as many stealth scans as we want, and you guessed it, Sweeping Blasters. We can cast this wherever we want and just generally have a bunch of stealth scans, and I just don't see why we need that as much. And then the final thing I think you could have an argument is melee and range defense by 2%, which obviously is great, but you have to just ask yourself, is it better than any of these other points? And I don't think so. And so then in the heroic you have a lot of room for argument. I think the first one, Energy Rebounder, when you take damage, the active cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. So basically you can just cast Energy Shield more. And so if you took a lot of these Energy Shield buffs, yeah, could make it worth your while. But I would rather have other things, as we'll go on to. But you have a serious argument for this if you want to. I think this might be more of a PvE ability. I'm not sure though. Again, I'm not a PvE expert, but I think this, as we'll get into later, is a little bit more helpful. And the second part of that, energy redoubt, I think this is great, except one, it absorbs a low amount of damage, which will be gone in a second if you're in trouble. And then two, once every 10 seconds, I mean, you always have a dot on you, and basically the dot will just eat up the energy redoubt, and when you get aim to blast or assassinate or whatever hard-hitting ability these guys are doing to you, they'll just completely ignore it. The next one, jet rebounder, increases the damage by jet boost. I mean, this does what, 500 damage versus the like 4,000 you're getting here. I mean, just increasing the damage is not going to do anything. And then in addition, it reduces the cooldown. We already reduced the cooldown a little bit. I don't really find myself needing to use it more if we're trying to do damage, not just push people around, and so this just is not as helpful. Next one, heals. I've never really tried this. I guess if you're in the middle of your friends, you could get some decent numbers. I mean, if you're in the middle of a scrum just doing a jet boost, push everyone back, heal yourself, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth? You're a damage class primarily. Healing is not your job. People want and you will not do as much healing as you will damage. That's just the general truth of it. You should focus on your role, and that's just my opinion. Again, this is all opinionated. You can choose whatever ones you want, but that's just my thoughts. This is a must in PvP. Like, whatever else you take in your discipline you can disagree with, but this is a must. When Blazing Bolts on the move is just great. It's 3.0, we got mobility, and this is the biggest part of our mobility. You see the sorcerers running while they cast their Thundering Blast. You see the mercenary healers with the progressive scan. This is our big moment. We can chase people down with Blazing Bolts, and that's just essential for PvP. For PvE, you could maybe get away with not taking this because all you're doing is run through a rotation on like a boss or something. Sure, if you want to take another ability versus this, go right ahead, but for PvP, I think this is mandatory. The next one I also took is stabilized armor, and this is more PvP based. Area of effects by 30%, and then stun damage less than 30%. So I'm often in both. So this is essentially 60% less damage from all sources. Comparing this against energy rebound, you get it's a 20% chance for low damage absorption versus 60% damage reduction. I mean, that's pretty great. And especially, I mean, they took away the sources and the sage's ability to slow you in the area of effect, but we still have the sniper's little area of effect that slows you, and so you're in an area of damage for a decent amount of time, and this helps you just not die from it. Next one I think is pretty stupid. Reduces cooldowns by cure and disabling shot. When do we cast cure that much? I mean, unless it's this, but you really just don't cast cure that much, you don't really need it. And you build up 10 stacks of supercharge over the course of recharge and reload. Guess how long recharge and reload is? 15 seconds. In 10 seconds, you can build the exact same amount by just doing Culto Shot. So I don't see why you would ever take that. You could make an argument that, okay, say you're in south, right, and you push them back, they're going west, you can quickly heal yourself up, and so you can do two things at once. You can heal yourself pretty quickly and also build supercharge, but I would think you would just heal yourself and then do Culto Shot on the run when you go over there. It's just, in my opinion, it's pretty stupid, and it can only do it once every 30 seconds, right? So just not as helpful. This one is the other one I think you have a pretty good argument for. I think we had this in 2.0. Reduces the cooldowns of the concussion missile and power surge. As you can tell, these guys, this is weird. They both have about the same cooldown. That's what, because you can look around, hey, this is a ranged DPS or healer just on the outside. You can quickly, and I keybound this really quickly, just quick, instant stun, and there you go. So, one, that's good for that. And then two, if you have another second charge, maybe you can get away with an instant tracer missile as well, or 2 tracer missiles if you really need that. So I think you got a pretty good argument for this. But if we say that this is mandatory, and again, I find myself a little too squishy for my liking. If I didn't have this, I can't even imagine. So I think this is great. In my opinion, this maybe ranks a little bit higher than that. I don't know. But I think these two, in my opinion, are a little bit more important. And so that just about wraps us up, guys. I mean, this part right here, you have to get your utility points. This might be a little bit controversial, but I think it's the best. And the final two abilities on our heroic utilities, I think, are the best you can do with your points. So that just about wraps it up, guys. I gave my opinions. Obviously, the whole reason why 3.0 was such a pretty cool idea is that you can do whatever you like, and if your playstyle matches a certain utility point, go for it, and it makes sense to take what you use the most. But good luck. Thanks for all the support. I've especially gotten a lot of subscribers, a lot of views lately, and I really appreciate it. I'll be trying to roll out some more interesting videos like this, which I think might help you, might be just interesting. Hope you learned something, even if it's something like, what did burst mode do, or anything else like that. So thanks, guys.